This is why it is so important that if you have children, you do not talk negatively to yourself, because that is going to become the voice that they hear when they are older. Hello everyone, we are back on the trail and back for another mindset talk. How you talk to yourself matters for a vast number of reasons. It does not just affect you. You may think that it's just making your life miserable, but in actuality, it is actually making those around you miserable as well. And without the tools to properly understand this topic, you're probably never going to get out of it and kind of spiral into just a very unfulfilling life. Now, of course, there are people who never think about this in their entire lives, and that's where they repeat generational trauma. Now, there's two kinds of trauma. There's big traumas that actually, like events that happen to you in your life that seriously impact who you are and shape you as a person. And then there's little traumas, like if you had a pretty normal family, but there was like maybe something your brother always did to you, like just called you names or something like that. That's like little t trauma. So this is important because without the tools to help you cope through these different things and kind of rewire your brain into a more positive speaking manner, you're just going to kind of end up spiraling, and then it creates a pattern where then it goes down to the next generation and the next generation. So this is not just affecting you, this is affecting the people that you work with, this is affecting your family, your kids, all of the above. So it's definitely something that needs to be addressed, and it's definitely not talked about enough. And people like to just shout affirmations like, I am this, which is a valid tool, but if you don't put work behind it and honesty behind it, it's not going to work most of the time. So why do we want to be wary of the way that we are talking to ourselves? Well, you can literally rewire your brain. That is probably the best fact out there. You can rewire your brain. I've literally done this to myself. A fun and silly example is that I used to really hate broccoli, but I knew that it was so good for me. Same thing with salmon. I literally just one day said, I love broccoli. I love salmon. And the first few times, yes, it felt like I was lying to myself, but after a while, because of the way that language works in our brain, after a while, your own brain starts to believe it, and then it becomes true. So what most people battle with is the negative thoughts in their head, and sometimes this can be genetic, like you are genetically exposed to having higher anxiety, which is common for a lot of people. But in our world today, anxiety and depression are much more prevalent, not only because they're just talked about more in general, but the way that society is constructed now really emphasizes how important it is to compare yourself to others. I don't mean important in the good way. I mean, that's just the way that social media rewards you, is by always having an opinion about something or always comparing to something. That is really a recipe for disaster as far as like peace of mind and really just a good healthy relationship with yourself and your mind. Step 1, stop caring what people think so much. And I know that is very much harder to do than it is to say, but it is huge. Have any of you ever thought about where a negative thought comes from? I bet you haven't until I just asked it right now. Like, honestly, think to yourself, any negative thoughts you have ever had about yourself, would you choose to think that? Like, would you honestly choose to think that you're ugly? that you're just not good enough. So that voice that you hear that's telling you you're not good enough actually isn't yours. It is something you've heard from your past, whether that was someone telling you those things or someone saying those things out loud to themselves. That voice, your brain automatically basically inputs in your own brain. And it wasn't meant to be a bad thing. It wasn't meant to tear us down like that. It was a protective mechanism, because if you think about human history as a whole, this modern era is really new. Our brains developed in defense mode. So we always had to know, okay, is this trait going to get me killed? So it always sought out negative things. Now, that's a problem for today's society because we live in abundance. So we never have to really be looking out for negative things that are going to hurt us, truly. So what this does is it just creates a bad relationship with yourself because you're constantly hearing that negative voice. This is why it is so important that if you have children, you do not talk negatively to yourself, because that is going to become the voice that they hear when they are older. Let me say that again. If you have children and you speak negatively about yourself in front of them, that voice will become their negative voice when they grow up. Let that sink in. And how this relates to those around you is basically the same thing. Your brain does adopt things that it sees from around you. So your friends and how they speak to themselves is really important as well, because you're likely to adopt that same kind of thinking, same kind of actions that goes along with it. So when thinking about the things that people do to change their mindsets, mantras definitely comes to mind. And so does the people who shout manifestations. Now, manifestations on their own are not going to get you anywhere, but the phrasing of the words is actually really important. If any of you have read Atomic Habits, this is going to sound very familiar, and kind of like how we talked about habits in our first video. These thoughts that you have about yourself and to yourself, they are habits, so you have to practice them as if they were exactly that, a habit. So what you want to do is practice these things, and if you are having negative thoughts, you need to interrupt them. Most people think you're crazy if you talk to yourself, but if you are not speaking to yourself in a kind manner, even when things are hard, and even when you are trying to make progress, you're never actually going to get anywhere. So when you talk to yourself, you need to be precise and detailed. So you say, I am the type of person who wakes up at 6 a.m. And if you say that enough, you're going to believe yourself. And that's basically all it is you're tricking yourself into believing what you want. So I want you to think about the life that you want, a life that you would design for yourself where you are happy and you achieve the things you want to achieve. And then you're going to basically tell yourself you are all of those things until they come true. And now this doesn't just mean they're going to happen with no work. You do need to work towards those things, but saying those things about yourself in a positive light not only is going to lift the moods of those around you, but it's also going to lift your mood. You're going to feel so much better. And generally, it's going to make you a little bit more understanding towards other people who haven't quite mastered the art of talking to themselves in a positive manner. When you do catch yourself talking to yourself in a negative way, it's important to interrupt that thought. When you interrupt that thought, basically what you're telling your brain is, no, I'm not the kind of person that talks to myself in that way. I will be respectful to myself as if I was talking to some stranger on the street. You need to be respectful for yourself because you are the person that you go home with every night. There's nobody else. It's just you at the end of the day. Even if you have a family and you have a partner, it's still you in your own head. They can never be inside there with you. So if you wouldn't speak to someone that you respect in the tone that you speak to yourself, maybe you need to reevaluate how you're speaking to yourself, because it may be a little too negative. I personally have worked on this for a really long time, and one of my biggest tools is using the Daily Stoic Journal, and that really helps me to kind of think about how I can be better, but also how living life in general is really hard. You shouldn't discredit the fact that living life is hard just so that you can have a positive mindset. People who have a positive mindset, and I would like to include myself in that group, know that life is difficult. We're not saying that it's easy, but when you speak to yourself more kindly and you speak the things that you want to be into existence, actually verbally saying them and repeating them to yourself in your head, it helps kind of alleviate how difficult life is, because focusing on the negative is only going to bring you down and down and down and put you in a spiral. Whereas when you think about the positive and you kind of bring those things into light, it just gives life a kind of glow. Pull a positive out of everything. Like, you can be in the toughest situation, and when you say it could be worse, you're seeing that this too shall pass, and you are strong enough to handle it. The most common place that I feel negative self-talk is in the fitness community, and most specifically in people who are trying to lose weight, because they're developing a pattern. So how we talked about in the habits video, what you do every day is who you become. So these people are going to the gym, but a lot of the reason behind people exercising in general, especially for weight loss, is that they are spiraling from a negative reaction, like someone called them fat, and so they have this sudden burst of motivation to go work out or go do the damn thing, but that only lasts so long, and hate can only fuel you for so long. And that existence of being fueled by hate is not a fun one, because everything is about revenge. Everything is about getting back at someone. But when you do something for the love of your body and the love of health, you create an entirely different relationship with that thing. And this can be applied to anything, but how you are speaking about things also matters. Say you need to do a job for 2 years before you can get this promotion that you want. And you say to yourself, well, I have to do this for 2 years, so I'm just going to put in my 2 years and then it'll be over. Instead of thinking, what can I learn from this? How can this help me in the future? How is this opportunity unique? Those things could really push you up the ladder faster than you think, but you're so focused on getting your 2 years in and getting out that you really miss an opportunity. So that's kind of on reframing the way you look at situations as well, but that is completely correlated with how you talk to yourself and how you think about things. So the biggest message I want you to get from this video is that how you are speaking to yourself affects everyone. If it affects the next generation, they're going to affect another generation and all of those people around them. It is a huge trickle effect down. But if you can bring the opposite and be a positive thinker, that will also have the same effect, but it will multiply. Positivity compounds. It's absolutely incredible what it can do. And I hope that the people that I am around can feel my positivity and understand that it's not by chance. I work on this every single day. I actively do mindset work, and it's not silly. Everyone should be doing it. In fact, more people should be doing it than are, because the people who think the people who think it is silly are likely the ones that probably need it the most. So just focus on being your positive self and rewiring your brain, because you can. And you can do that by being specific about what you want and who you are. And if you don't believe it quite yet, say it anyway. Say it anyway, and say it a lot. Because although you may not believe it for the first few times, you're going to. And I will be so proud when you do. If there's any other tips that help you keep peace of mind in hard situations or just in general life, leave them down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.